Hello and good afternoon or morning, whatever it is when you're watching this. Today I'm going to show you how to make this earring. It is a hoop earring that is made using Cellini spiral. I have it here in a couple of colors. I made this to match the bracelet, and it's not difficult, but it's a little more difficult to make the earring than the bracelet, so I'd recommend making the bracelet first if you're not very experienced with Cellini spiral. This is sort of a miniaturized version of this, so it's simpler in the sense that you're using fewer different kinds of beads, but I think it's always a little more difficult to do something that just has very small beads in it unless you're used to doing that. So learning to do the Cellini spiral I think is a little easier when you're using at least some larger beads. So this is a fun project. It is something I've always wanted to do, to have a Cellini spiral hoop earring, and I'm really pleased that it's here now. So if this looks like it'd be fun to you, if it looks like something you would enjoy, then why don't we get started, and I'll begin by showing you what supplies you'll need to make it. The bracelet this earring is patterned after has 5 different sizes of beads on it. It has a 15-0, 2 different colors of 11-0s, an 8-0, and a 3mm fire polish bead. In order to miniaturize it enough to fit on an earring this size, I have reduced the size of some of the beads, and I've also reduced the number of different beads that are on it. So all we will need are one 15-0, one 11-0, one 2mm fire polish bead, and that's it for beads. And then in addition, you will need a hoop earring. These are an inch apart. An inch across. I wouldn't make it any smaller than this or you'll have trouble bending the beadwork around it, but anything an inch or larger will work fine. And that is all you're going to need, other than I will be using a size 11 beading needle, and for thread I am going to use Nozu Sunoku in black since it goes with what I'm working with. So why don't we get started with this earring. The first thing we're going to do is to pick up the beads that are going to be in our initial round. And since this is Peyote, the first round will end up being rounds 1 and 2. So let's pick up 4 of the 15-0s, 2 11-0s, 2 fire polish, and 2 more of the 11-0s. So this is what we'll have on our needle, and then we're going to bring this down to about 4 inches from the end. And you could put a stop bead on the end if you'd like. That will help you. I didn't. I just kind of hold on to them this way. So now I'm going to go up through all the beads again to form a circle. Keeping my thumb on top of my beads. Okay, and this is what I'll end up with. I'm now going to go through all of them again, and this is because I want the beginning and the end to be pretty firm, and so I'm going to have several passes of thread going through it. This will also make it so there's really no need to put a knot in the end. This will not come out. No pun intended. So I'm now going back through all of them. So at the end of this, there will be 2 passes of thread through these beads. You don't want to make it too tight that you can't do the next round. You just want it pretty sturdy. Okay, and now the last thing I'm going to do is there are 4 15-ohs here. I'm going to go up through the first 2. That will kind of pull this little bit here where the thread's showing, pull it together, and will also give us a good place for starting each round. Alright, and there you go. And I am not going to pull on this to make it any tighter than it is already. Here on this one, you can see this is one of these is the first round and one the last. And so they both look fairly even. Alright, so we are now going to start round 3, because this is going to become round 1 and 2. And the trick to Cellini spiral is that you always pick up whatever bead you're coming out of, you are going to pick up that bead. So I'm coming out of a 15-0, so I'm going to pick up a 15-0. And then just as with any other peyote stitch, you're going to skip a bead and go through the next bead. So I'm going to skip this one and go through this one. See, if I had these too tight, it would be really hard to get in there. So it's really about striking a happy balance. All right. Now I am still coming out of a 15-0, so I'm going to pick up a 15-0. I am going to skip the next bead, which is the first of the 11-ohs, and I'm going to go through the second 11-0. Same thing again. This time I'm coming out of an 8-0. So I'm going to pick up an 8-0, and you notice how I keep turning this in my hand so that whatever I'm going to be doing next is kind of sticking out here. So it's easy for me to access. So now I'm going to skip the next bead, which is a fire polish, and go through the second fire polish. Now I'm coming out of a fire polish, so I'll pick up a fire polish, skip the next bead, which is an 11-0, and go through the one after that, which is the second 11-0. Okay, now I'm coming out now of where my tail thread is, which I'm holding between 2 fingers here. So that tells me I'm just about to the end. Okay, I'm coming out of an 11-0, so I pick up an 11-0. I'm going to go past this next bead, which is a 15-0, and go through the next 15-0. And then we are at the end of our round. Now the thing that's different about doing peyote in the round as opposed to flat work is that with each round you don't come to the end and then turn around. Instead, you have to step up to the next round. And we are now in that place because you see I'm coming out here, and so I'd normally skip the next bead, but you see this bead is actually up outward from this one. So that's what shows me that I have completed the whole round, and so now I need to step up so that I will only be working with the beads that I put on in the last round. So see, now I'm in this outer ring. Now this is going to be a little difficult for a while because right now it's still flat. It's not shaped like a tube. We just don't have enough here to make it into a tube. But what's weird is that you end up with these beads all really far apart and with a lot of thread showing. Don't worry about that. That's just how it'll be. And once we start forming it in a tube, then you will be able to see what is in the last round more easily, and a lot of that thread will just go away. But we're not quite there yet, so we're going to have to just continue at least the first part of this round with it being flat. I don't really have a hard and fast rule about when I start forming it into a tube. I just more go by the feel of it, and I'll share that with you when we get to that point. So this is where I'm going to step up. So I go through that bead that is just kind of kitty corner to the previous 15-0. Okay, now I am ready to start the next round. So I'm coming out of a 15, so I pick up a 15, go through that next bead in the outer round, and I'm coming out of a 15, so once again I'll pick up a 15. I'll go through the next bead that's sticking out, which if you notice is way over here. This is part of why this just feels so weird and unnatural, because they're so far apart. But it is the next one, so I'll go through that. And turn my beads a little bit more. Okay, now I'm coming out of the 11-0, so I'm going to pick up another 11-0, and I'm going to go through the next bead in that outer ring, which is the 2mm fire polish. Turn a bit, coming out of the 2mm fire polish, so I am going to pick up another 2mm fire polish, and I'm going to go through the next bead in the outer ring, which is an 11-0 seed bead. Okay, I'm coming out of an 11-0 seed bead, so I'm going to pick up another 11-0 seed bead. And then I am going to be about back at the beginning, and so I am going to go through So now we're going to start round 5. I've already done my step up, so next I'm going to pick up a 15-0, go through the next up bead, which is the next 15-0. And this is starting to get a little awkward, so I'm probably going to be pulling it into a tube pretty soon. So you can see there's a lot of thread showing here. Alright, so it's time for another 15-0. And then I'm going to go through the up bead, which is the second of the 11s that are visible. Coming out of an 11, so I'm going to pick up an 11, go through the second fire polish. Now I'm going to, at this point it's just getting really hard. There's so much thread showing and I'm having to go such long distances to get where I'm going. So what I'm going to do to make it begin the tube, becoming a tube, is pull on both ends, and then where my working thread is, kind of pull down, because otherwise you have this big gap there. Okay, so it's not much of a tube yet, but it's the beginning. And this will make it easier to do the stitches. Alright, so I'm still have a lot to hang on to, but I've got my thumb and forefinger over this where the tail thread enters the beadwork. So I'm coming out of a 2mm fire polish, so I pick one up. I'm going to go through the second of the number 11s, which is going to be the up bead. I'm going to turn it a little more, coming out of an 11, so I pick up an 11, and then it's time for our last stitch and to start the next round. So this is the first of the 15s. This is the second one, and then I'm going to step up. So I'm going through 2 beads there. I'm going to pick up a 15-0 because I'm coming out of a 15-0, and you can almost kind of see that this is a down bead and an up bead. We're almost there. I'm going to go through the second one. I'm coming out of a 15-0, so I'm going to pick up a 15-0. Going to go through the second 11-0, which is my up bead. And then I just keep turning it in my hand so that I'm always in position to easily do my stitches. Okay, go through the second of the 2mm fire polish. And since I'm coming out of a fire polish, I will pick up a fire polish, and I will go through the up bead of the 11. Okay, we are almost at the end of this round. I picked up an 11-0. I'm going to go through the second 15-0 and then step up. And now I'm ready for another round. I'm going to go off camera now and do a few more rows, and I'll come back and show you again. It's really easier to see the spiral once you have a few rows down, and I can show you the progress a little better. Yeah, I've finished my step up, and so now I'm ready to start the next round. Here are here's an up bead and here's an up bead, and then in between is the down bead. So that's what it's a lot easier to see right now. I'm trying to get it in the way for you to see it even more clearly. So anyway, we're coming out of a 15-0, so now I'm going to add a 15-0. And then repeat, since I am still coming out of a 15-0. Go through the next up bead. So there's the down bead and there's the up bead. And I'm coming out of an 11. I pick up an 11. I'm going to skip the down bead and go through the up bead. Turn it some more. Okay. I am coming out of a fire polish, so that's what I'm going to be using next. I'm going to skip the down bead and go through the up bead. Coming out of an 11, pick up an 11. Going to skip the next down bead. I'm going to go through the next bead and the one after that because that is our setup, step up. Okay, so that's what we have, and now we're going to continue until we have a piece that is long enough to cover our hoop earring. Okay, here we have the tube that is finished. I tried it on the hoop and decided that with just one more round I thought it would fit well, so I've done that. So now before I finish off my thread, what I'm going to do is firm up this last round. If you remember at the beginning we made sure the first round was pretty well done and firm. So now I'm going to do that with the last one. And so the way that I do that is I'm actually going to go through all of the beads of the previous 2 rows. So I'm going to go through both the down and the up beads. So here's the down bead. I'm going to go through the down and the up. And then for the 11, same thing, down and up. So what this is going to do is it's going to make the end a little more even rather than being up and down. It'll be more like a solid piece. All right, now I'm going to do the fire polish, the next 2 number 11s, and now I'm going to do the last 4 of the 15-0s. So these 2, and these 2. Okay, and now I'm going to go around one last time, just for a little extra strength. That number 15 is getting pretty full at this point, but I can still get it through. Okay, at this point that's all I'm going to do, just in case I've made a mistake. I want to be able to make any changes if I need to. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the beadwork on the hoop. And I'm going to start with the bottom. I know that I'm not going to need this tail any longer. So I'm going to simply take my zapper and zap it. You could also cut it if you prefer. Okay, so I'm going to start this end down here. The main thing you need to make sure of is that you keep your beadwork fairly rounded, because this is rounded. What's pretty much inevitable is that this will at some point poke through, but that's not a problem. Just keep your beadwork as round as you can. You have this really close, so you're kind of working it. All right, so here you can see it came through. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to back up a little bit and just keep rounding it. So anyway, what I was saying is you have kind of a limited workspace here because you have the other part of the clasp there. Oh, that one went on pretty well. Okay, so now all I have to do is to finish off this end, and so I'm going to do that, and then we will be done, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we are with the final product. Here is what we just made, and here's another one that I made in purple and silver. It ended up a little larger. It just all depends on the size of beads you use, even though these are both using 15s, 11s, and 2 millimeters. There's still a little difference between different brands, but they're pretty close. There really isn't anything else you need to do. This is going to, although it can wiggle around a bit, it's really not going to go anywhere because both these bits are up, and so it's just naturally going to sit like that. I have worn this pair quite a bit and have never had any problems with it. So this is the Pirouette earring, and it goes with, matches the Pirouette bracelet. And as I said before, I have video up already that I will link for the bracelet. This was a lot of fun. It's something I've wanted to do for a while, to make a hoop earring using the Cellini spiral. And it's really a pretty quick project too. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you have any comments, and I hope to see you in the next video. I do have patterns for these. They're on my Etsy shop, and that is, I have that in my ending credits. So again, thank you for coming and spending a little time with me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.